said about the project. Great project. We're all very proud to have been a part of it. It is, though, what goes on inside the walls of this hospital that makes us who we are. And it is through the extraordinary work of our physicians, nurses, and the entire healthcare team that these kinds of miracles that I'm going to talk to you about can happen at the University of California. I am grateful for your efforts, as is the young woman I am about to introduce to you. Stephanie Schaefer suffers from a rare congenital disorder called Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome, a syndrome that makes a person susceptible to excessive bleeding from varicosity, port wine stains, hemangiomas. It's so rare, I had never heard of it before, it's so rare there are only 1,300 documented cases in the world. And Stephanie has one of them. So when Stephanie and her husband Dwayne decided that they'd like to have a child, Stephanie was kind of concerned about what this would mean to her. So she went to the Mayo Clinic, sought out specialists, talked to them about the advisability of her becoming pregnant. They weren't too sure about it. They sent her to a specialist in New York who had seen just 8 of these cases. Had any knowledge that there had been problems with people with this disorder getting pregnant, so gave her the green light. So less than 2 years ago, Stephanie delivered a beautiful baby boy, Brian's out there somewhere with his dad. Oh, there's Brian, waving to mother on the stage. By cesarean section at a community hospital in South Orange County. A few days later, she started to suffer major life-threatening complications as she started with this uncontrolled bleeding. The hospital she was at transfused her with multiple units of blood products for over a week. They were kind of confounded and what the heck to do. So they called up here to the University Hospital and talked to Dr. Marian Sinat, one of our trauma surgeons. Dr. Sinat arranged for Stephanie to be transferred to us. Upon arriving, the journey to save her life literally began. After 2 days, we put her in our ICU. She was in the ICU in the hospital in South County. She began to suffer massive internal bleeding. She had spontaneously ruptured her spleen and was exsanguinating. She went into cardiac arrest, okay, flat line. I'm an ER nurse by background. A lot of my colleagues here worked in emergency rooms or ICUs. Started CPR on her, the ICU resident, 45 minutes of CPR. That's a long time to do CPR. Dr. Matt Dolich, who was the trauma surgeon that was on duty that day, happened to be in the operating room tending to a gunshot wound to the abdomen when Stephanie was suffering her cardiac arrest. So the team continued to work on her. We called in Dr. Mike Lekwa, the director of our program, whose birthday it happened to be, but Mike, being ever the trauma surgeon, came in to relieve Matt Dolich, who was sitting over there, so Matt could get to the ICU to attend to Stephanie. I talked to Matt before the first time I ever told Stephanie's story to a group, and he said, you know what, Maureen, this particular case took me out to the personal edge, because, you know, those of us that have had babies and been with our husbands, you take the picture of you holding your newborn. Somebody had thought to bring that picture when they transferred Stephanie to us and put it on the bulletin board in her room. And during this lengthy code that Dr. Dolich and the team in the critical care unit ran, he began to think it might be futile care. But he told me that every time he looked at that picture of that beautiful young woman holding that beautiful baby boy, he said, being the father of 2 young children himself, he could not let her go. So they continued to perform CPR, got a faint pulse back on her. The trauma team was ready in the operating room, got her downstairs, took out her spleen. The high-risk perinatal physicians had to remove her uterus, where she was also bleeding, readmitted her to our ICU. Pretty rocky post-op course. She suffered liver failure, kidney failure. We had to put her on dialysis. She was so debilitated, she actually had to have very aggressive physical therapy and learn to walk again. We discharged her home in a wheelchair. She remained in a wheelchair for weeks while she continued to rehab. As you can see her now, she's a beautiful young woman, busy mother, back to work as a social worker. And I think it's just one patient story. There are other grateful patients, but this is why it is so important to have this university hospital in Orange County. We are a resource to you and to other medical centers, and it is through the efforts of our fantastic physicians, nurses, and other healthcare providers that Stephanie is with us today. And a year ago, we had pictures before her celebrating her son's first birthday. So I thank Dr. Dolich and Drs. Lekowa, Sinat, and Stephanie's going to do that herself a much better way. But I am very, very proud to be a part of this team and have it reflect on the work that you all do, and very proud to be able to finally turn over a facility to you all that you have long deserved for the work that you've done for these people in Orange County. Thank you very much. I'd now like to introduce our miracle patient, Stephanie Schaefer.